advocates and engaged leaders from throughout the world, literally. My name is Eddie Sell. I'm the president of the California State Firefighters Association and the fire chief for the City of Hemet Fire and Life Safety Agency. And it's an honor to be here with all of you today. And so let's talk a little bit about what LEDS is. So LEDS stands for Leadership, Equity, Diversity, and Service. These are things that we hear a lot more about in today's fire service than we have probably obviously in the last 10 years or so, those of us that have been around for a while. A lot of people are scared of those words, right? And that's frankly, that was the reason why I created the LEDS committee at CSFA over 4 years ago, because frankly, our organization lacked diversity and the makeup that reflected California and the rest of the fire service. So the true spirit behind LEDS is that we're not going to have all the answers, but we're certainly going to engage in the courageous conversations, and we're going to learn from one another, and that's what's so incredibly important. So with that, again, today we have some incredible folks that are joining us today, and I'm going to start with Dina Lee. Dina is the former fire chief of the El Segundo Fire Department. I personally have known Dina for over 25 years, and she was our last LEDS chairperson, chair committee member, or chairman, and she now is the Pathways chair, and she's so incredibly busy that we had to turn over the reins over to Captain Curtis Thompson of the Oakland Fire Department. Raise your hand, Curtis. So Curtis is our new LEDS chair, but we're going to let him off the hook just a little bit. He doesn't have to be up here this year. But he's doing a tremendous job already because he cares, and he is engaged, which is incredibly part of the value and the skill set that's needed to push the fire service forward. So with that, Dina, we can start off to your left with introductions. Chief Fulcher, go ahead.
That's right. Good morning, I'm David Fulcher. I am the Southern Region Chief for CAL FIRE. And this is well, I'd like to say thank you, Eddie and CSFA, for allowing me to be here the second year, and look forward to the conversation today.
Good morning, everyone. Jason Hosea. I think I walked into the wrong room. I don't think I belong with this panel of superstars here. I thought this was for lunch. Yeah, good morning, everybody. Jason Hosea, I'm Assistant Chief Operations, Long Beach Fire Department. Excited to have this conversation. I know we did this last year. I think we had a really good conversation, a lot of great outcomes from it, so I'm looking forward to another great conversation today.
I'm Christine Larson. I work for LA City Fire. I'm currently the Assistant Fire Marshal. At the end of next month, I will transition and be the Assistant Chief in our new Equity and HR Bureau.
Hi, I'm Danny Cotton. I used to be the Commissioner of London Fire Brigade, and it's a genuine honour to be over here and sharing experiences with this fabulous group of people.
Good morning, I'm Heather Marquez, Division Chief, Alameda County Fire, that's in the East Bay of San Francisco. I'm also the chair of the CSFA Strategic Planning Committee.
What do you guys think? That's pretty outstanding panel, so let's give it a round. So I do have some prepared questions, and it's really to move the conversation into whatever direction our leaders want to go. And so we're going to have a chance to hear from everyone, and then there will be time at the end as well to certainly get some audience participation. So we'll start with the former chair first.
Yes, sir.
All right. What does diversity and inclusion mean to us as an organization or profession? And us can be CSFA, or even you could think back on your El Segundo time.
So what does diversity, can you say that one more time, sir?
Diversity and inclusion mean to us as an organization and profession.
So what does it mean? I think that diversity, we all know, that we're stronger the more diverse that we are, and the more that we actually represent the communities that we serve. And even on internally as diversity of thought, as we have different ideas. And, you know, if I had a nickel for every time I told someone on my team, great idea, you know, I'd be rich. Because you need to listen, and also being an inclusive leader was very important to me as the fire chief in El Segundo. I didn't want anyone to ever feel that they didn't belong there, anyone to ever feel outcast, and I did everything I could to make the environment psychologically safe. And that even means, and we all know that if you have to feel comfortable to make mistakes and speak your opinion, or it's not going to work. So there's a lot of work that we can do on, and I mean, there's experts up here about how to be inclusive leader, but I feel that at the heart of it, and what I've learned for myself to be more inclusive, is that it's personal growth, emotional intelligence, self-awareness. It's the ability to acknowledge and make mistakes, and to just be the one that starts to be the role model, to be vulnerable and say that it's okay. End of report.
End of report. Anybody want to tackle the same question or just add on to that, to what Dina had to say? Sure.
And for me, completely agreeing with 100% what Dina said, but also, you know, if we are talking about reflecting and working with all of our communities, if you're not fishing in the biggest pool possible for your talent, if you're not selecting from the greatest area in your communities, you're missing out on really, really great candidates to join your job. So if you are only recruiting people who look like the people already in your organisation, you're never going to have that true diversity of thought. And you need to be out there, you need to be, you know, selecting the very best people from the very biggest pool of talent. And there are areas in our communities that are untapped, that people don't see they can join because they see no one in the organisation that looks like them. They don't think it's a job for them. And yet it does take courageous people to step into that and be the first at a number of things, but to then be there as role models for other people to come along and join. And I know for definite, when I was commissioner, I saw other officers who surrounded themselves with people who were very much like them. And I don't know if you're all familiar with the story of the Emperor's New Clothes, where someone will tell you what you want to hear. You need people who will challenge you, and you need people who will have that different conversation and have a different perspective. And that can be uncomfortable at times, but actually the more we encourage that and support that, the more we bring people on who are different and different to us, who look different to us, who think different to us, but who can actually go out there and make a difference in our communities. Because, you know, it's really important that inside our own organisations we look different. But if we're not looking outside our organisations, then we're never going to truly provide the best service we can to the people who we serve, and that's what we're there for.
Wow.
Great answer.
How do you follow that one? On both perspectives, that equity of, or diversity of thought, we all know what the diversity of our skin looks like in our hair. Those of us who have really good heads, the rest of you, sorry. We need to have that diversity. But it's that the diversity of thought, reaching out into that greater pool. We are so inclined to want to sit in that pool that we know, and we miss out on that pool that we don't know. When I think about diversity, it's reaching out beyond what I think. It's saying, you know what, young lady in the front, what's your thought? You're going to open it up and you're going to give me something different that's going to lead me down to another path, and we're going to be more engaged. And the idea that everybody in this room, Dave Fulcher can't solve anything. He doesn't know anything. I guarantee you that if we put all of us together with all of our different experiences, we can solve all the world's problems. Just ask us as a group. We can do that. And I say that in jest, but I think I really believe this, is that we have so many different experiences that we can come up with a potential solution based on everybody in this room. And none of us are alike. That's diversity. We'll focus on the outer elements, but we also need to focus on the inner elements. And whether it's a paper ceiling where everybody has to have a PhD or you can't raise to the top, or that you all have to start out through this fire academy, but you didn't have the money to do so, so therefore I'm not going to look at you. How are we excluding people by just fire actions? By what we do. But I also want to focus on inclusion. And there's an old saying, you can be invited to the dance, but never asked to dance. I'm going to put every single one of you in my room, in my office, on my panel, and never ask you for your opinions. How does that go? How many of you have done that? I can honestly say I've done it at some point. Question is, are you still doing it, and am I still doing it? When we talk about inclusion, it's not just filling the panel with people. It's actually looking for their opinions and making them feel part of your team and engaged. Because otherwise, why'd you bring them to the dance? If you're not going to dance with them, or because you don't like their dance. I mean, you can pull a lane from Friends, and that is a weird dance if you ever seen her do Witchy Wonka. Most of you would like, oh my God, she's embarrassing. She's out there doing it, and she's giving us another perspective that that's actually dancing in somebody's eyes. Incorporate that. Stop inviting them to the dance and not actually asking someone to dance. Because they're not going to give you their opinion, and you're not going to be as diverse, and you're not going to be as inclusive, and you're not going to get the right answers.
Thank you, Chief Marquez.
So Chief Loeffler brings up a good point, and I think that there's a heavy emphasis when we talk about diversity. That's always our selling point when it comes to recruitment. But the inclusion component really comes in during our retention phase. So it's like, we found you, and then we dropped you off at the fire station, and we're like, good luck. So there's a mentorship process, and there's a leadership role that has to take place. And diversity is the emphasis of when we're looking at our recruitment pool. How can we pull people from different parts of our community and our society? That's different ages, genders, sexual identifications, ethnicities. That's the diversity that we're always being told to go find. Go do the recruitment camps. Go out and sit at the table and stump for us. And that's the emphasis from our politicians and our leaders, to find the diverse pool of candidates. But it's once you get them back to your house and drop them off, the inclusion part has got to be at the company officer level, the battalion chief level, the people that are in the room with those individuals that are making sure they're being shepherded and that they're given a safe place to develop themselves. That's not only physical safety, but psychological safety. So being included involves having a voice at the table, whether that's a committee table or the dining table. And that's things like, working out together. Is the crew working out together? It's all the ways that we're building those relationships. And, we had celebrity chef Robert Irvine here yesterday, and we talked about commensality. That's actually been studied. When people eat together, when they cook for each other, they give of themselves and they receive into their bodies from another person. It's a practically spiritual event that takes place. And it's one of the reasons that we build that fraternity in the firehouse, that family sense. And so I think that recruitment is our heavy emphasis on diversity, but inclusion is how we retain people and make them feel like they want to stay and be a part of our team.
Thank you so much. You're giving me PTSD with Robert Irvine. It was fantastic. The tableside chat, except he threw my fan. Yeah, he did, and it still works. So.
If I can add something to that, Chief?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just to tag on to what Chief Marquez said. One of the conversations I've been having lately with leaders around the state is, what we're selling on the front end is not what we're providing on the back end. So what do I mean by that? I think we're doing a great job in our recruitment efforts, right? We're talking about, diversity and inclusion, and we have core values, and so those things are all great. And to your point, we're bringing people into the fire service and we're selling this idea to them, but that all kind of goes out the window once. And I hate to use this term, but then we put them out on the floor and we throw them to the wolves, right? Because we haven't mastered the effect of how do we get our entire organization to buy in on what we're doing. I think our recruitment teams, I think on the front end, I think we are moving solidly in one direction. But once we get them out on the floor, it's a grab bag of, you have different leaders, different leadership styles, great leaders, poor leaders. And so I think that's where the focus, we need to turn our focus when we start talking about diversity, retention, inclusion, because I just see that as an issue. How do we do that? So as a leader in my organization, that's kind of where I'm struggling right now. How do we turn this ship around and get people to buy in wholly on the diversity and inclusion piece? Because now you're talking about station life, and you all know, right, each station has its own environment, its own, just kind of the way they treat each other, their own style, their own, just what they do. How do we impact that as leaders? So that's one of the things I'm struggling with. And so when we leave today, I'm hoping that we'll have an answer to that. We'll solve that today. Just kidding.
But not all of us.
Yeah. If anyone has that answer, I'd love to hear it, because that's going to be a challenge for us moving forward. So, yeah.
Thank you. Chief Larson, how does your organization and the mission and vision align with the ideals of diversity and inclusion?
So about 2.5, 3 years ago, we did a cultural assessment within the department. Paid a lot of money to have Deloitte do an assessment. And it really was voluntary, and my mission was to have the civilians involved in it as well. And it really gave us a snapshot of where we succeeded and where we failed. And there was some very harsh criticism. To what he said, everybody says our drill tower is the problem. We too many people out in the drill tower. And the probationary members that had filled that out never complained about the drill tower. We welcomed them in. We were teaching them everything they needed to know. They felt safe. They were supported. When they got to that fire station, it was to the wolves. So, we're trying to start training the officers quarterly on diversity, equity, inclusion, but also leadership training. Because for our department, there's no requirement. You need time on the job, and that's it. We don't require certifications prior to promotion. So we have people that have various levels of education, various levels of leadership training, and so bringing them in and offering them that helps people understand what the actual goal is. And then the continuous messaging, training, offering those classes, and we've just recently started a workforce effectiveness section because we had some failures of people that promoted the first level captain. And kind of self-reflect on where did we make that mistake. Clearly there were some mistakes made, maybe the member wasn't supported enough, maybe they weren't really prepared for the promotion, but to have somebody go through the whole process, get promoted, and then fail on probation, that's not acceptable. So we're really doing that hard look at how do we support everybody in every rank through promotions, and then how do we support everybody else's educational development at every rank. So hopefully that's going to raise everybody's game. But we still have the challenge that I think maybe some of the other departments do. We're large departments, so we have that 5 generations in the fire station. And so when you're talking about the generational ways that we learn, we engage with each other, I truly believe that the millennials and Gen Zs and maybe the alphas are really going to drive the fire service change with their ideas of equity and inclusion and belonging. And some of the people like me that are older, we can help drive some of that change and put it out there and let everybody know about it. But it's going to be the people, the boots on the ground, that are going to make those changes inside the fire stations themselves. Starting mostly with that company officer, but also those locker room leaders.
I couldn't agree with that more. Company officer and locker room leaders, I like that. And I think we've all been guilty of that throughout our fire service journey. I know I always personally wanted to stay busy and active and go to busy houses and have that company pride. And I took part in a lot of that chest pounding and, oh my God, we're Truck 11 and we're whoever, right? And there is an importance to that. Certainly, I think some of that that friendly competition inspires you to grow and get better, right? But on the flip side, you also should grow and develop as a person. And I think, you know, in my opinion, a lot of the things that you learn as you try to become a company officer, for example, you should learn that way early on in your career, right? Some of those things, what we're talking about right here, that needs to start in drill school, in academies.
Well, that also speaks to the mentorship piece.
Right.
That's super, super important that fire services finding a mentor. You can reach out and ask that person. You don't have to be asked. But I also think it's incumbent on people that are captains or chiefs. If they see somebody that has that skill set, reach out to them and offer that mentorship, because then you're ensuring better leaders within your organization in the future.
Okay, that's great. Let's move on. Let's go to Chief Hosea. What are we currently doing to embrace diversity, inclusion, and leadership in our respective organizations? And you can speak, you know, for yours.
Yeah, so one of the things that we're involved with, and I'm involved with in our city, right? Our city, certainly coming out of the George Floyd incident, our city really embraced a position of racial equity, inclusion. And so all departments across the city were expected to contribute to this racial equity, these racial equity initiatives. And so every department head was tasked with, hey, what are you providing to the city collectively to uplift the community? So for the fire department, for us, one of the things that I was tasked with was to develop a program for our members, racial equity and inclusion, of course. And in rolling that out, I was anxious. I was nervous, because I know my department. I know my people. I know how it was going to be received. And so one of the approaches that I took was that I had to figure out, how am I going to sell this to our members? I think a lot of them are already on board. They understand the importance of equity and diversity, but there are a lot that weren't. And so I took it back to, hey, it's about understanding your community, right? Knowing your community. Just like any Fortune 500 company, in order to provide quality customer service to your customer, you need to know your customer. And so what does that mean for us in the fire service? That means going out, understanding where people are, why they are where they are. And you can talk about redlining and all those practices that kind of divided the cities economically, socioeconomically, and really having our members understand, hey, when you're going out to this neighborhood or that neighborhood, these people, these community members are in this place not because they're lazy, not because, there's a lot of history behind our communities. So that was the tack that I took. And so I felt that was a good way to get people to understand it wasn't threatening. But sure, people came in the room, there was a lot of, what is this? What are you gonna tell me about right now? And we rolled that out. I lost some friends on the department over that. But I was okay with that because I felt like the mission was so important, right, in our organization and for our community. We have to start taking these steps to turn the ship around. Are we going to do it in one training session or two? No, but it kind of ripped the Band-Aid off. It got people talking, got people thinking about, hey, what are we doing? How are we providing service? And so it just had tentacles, and it reaches out into everything that we do. Recruitment, our pathways programs. Chief Larson's big, and I stole a lot of what they're doing up in LA City for our pathways programs. Because when you have these pathways programs, what does our job create? It creates wealth. It creates education opportunities. It pulls people up out of poverty, right? Crime rates lower in the community. So it has this ripple effect. And so back to your question, hey, what are we doing in the fire department? That was one of the contributions that I would say for our organization that we were contributing. There's a lot more. It's a big story there, but that's one.
Why not? Yeah. Thank you so much. Chief Cotton, What successes and outcomes has your organization, the London Fire Brigade, realized from diversity initiatives or best practices?
So I think I'll reflect first of all back on the conversation I was having around the table earlier, looking at, so we have fire cadets, which are very similar to your Fire Explorer program, and one of my ambitions when I was commissioner was to ensure we had a cadet program in every one of London's 33 boroughs to be able to reach out to young people in the community, to get them, not necessarily because they were all going to join and want to become firefighters, but to get them to understand what London Fire Brigade was, what it was about, who was welcome, you know, the fact that we wanted young people from our community. And I remember being asked to go and do a pass-out parade for Southwark Borough, Old Kent Road Fire Station. Quite a universally troubled area, quite a lot of gang-related crime that went on there. And I walked into the fire station and I thought they'd done a setup effectively to come make me happy, because I have been so hugely passionate about diversity and inclusion throughout my whole career. And I thought, oh great, they've got all the cadets in from various different areas to make up one team, because out of the 22 of them, 18, 19 of them were young women. And I just thought, well, that never happens. But it just turned out these were the women that had, young women that applied, that joined the cadet scheme. They've been with us for a year. They came from every different area of that borough, from really deprived areas. They were phenomenal young women who I would have been stereotypically judgmental about, especially a couple of them had beautiful hair, beautiful nails, and I would never ever have put them rolling up hose. And yet there they were, fully engaged in competing with each other to roll out hose, to do all the drills, to get themselves done, and to be the very best. And it was amazing to see. I was just truly, truly humbled by the experience of being amongst these fabulous, fabulous young women. And actually, the profile was that out of those group, only 3 of them were white as well. And I just thought, this is the future. These are young people that I want to open the door to, and they're there, and they are so engaged and so passionate about London Fire Brigade. And then talking to the parents and guardians of those young people who were there, and they were there really proudly watching the pass out, and the number of them that said to me, thank you so much for the opportunity for including my young person in this, because they were in danger of going down the wrong path. They were heading into gangs, they were heading into that culture, there was nothing else for them to do in this area, and it has absolutely engaged them and given them a passion. And I was just, you know, I found the photograph earlier and I'm showing it to some people here because it just, you know, truly looked like what I want London Fire Brigade to be about. So for me, you know, having success in areas like that, because if we don't engage young people, if we don't get young people thinking about a job really early on, then we lose that opportunity. They'll go somewhere else, they'll become something else. And if we're not in talking at school age about, you know, what a firefighter looks like, breaking down some of those stereotypical images. And by that, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with our firefighters being seen as heroes, being seen as people who do fantastic, courageous things. But so much more of our job, and to set the context in London, we don't run medical calls, it is purely fire related. So, you know, we are there at the front line, but the amount of time we're actually responding compares to the amount of time we want people to be in the community engaging, making people safer, you know. So it is about all of those skills coming together and looking at a whole person and what we want them to bring to the table. So for me, just being able to engage with the right people at the right age, bring them on board, and even if they don't want to join London Fire Brigade, the fact that they then talk to their friends, talk to their peer group about what a great time they had and about what a fabulous place London Fire Brigade is, that spreads the word to the next generation. It spreads the word to the generation of their parents and carers who would never have thought about encouraging their young person to come forward and be part of the London Fire Brigade family. So for me, you know, that was such a great success. And, you know, I've been hugely passionate about, you know, trying to encourage especially women to join because, you know, we do still struggle on the numbers. Even when I left London Fire Brigade, I think we were running at about 9% of our operational workforce were women. It's not good enough. There are some fabulous people out there. You know, I'm not saying everyone wants to do our job, but there are a number of fabulous people who can. And for me, keeping on with that message, keeping working, keeping attracting people, keeping people understanding what the job's really about. But it's an ongoing process. You can't stop at any point. We've never achieved it. We've never succeeded on it. It's a message we need to keep delivering. And then very much as we said, once we get them in amongst our families, we've got to look after them. because it can be a really lonely, daunting place if you're different in any way, shape or form from the big group that's there. So, you know, for me, that looking at how we look after people, how we retain people, because there's absolutely no point in selecting and bringing in the most brilliant, talented young people if they leave within 2 years because we haven't been decent to them.
It's been great over the last couple of days, getting to know Chief Cotton and learn about her experience and what the London Fire Brigade does. A lot of similarities. She was telling me last night, though, how she thinks that we're crazy doing vertical ventilation and standing on roofs that are on fire. So we were talking about some tactics. It was pretty cool and fun. And I encourage everybody. I'm going to plug her 2 p.m. Presentation on the Grenfell Tower high-rise fire. Certainly, just to have her here, coming this far to spend some time with us is it's an honor. So another great friend of mine that's on this panel that's doing some amazing work, Chief Marquez. On a personal level, what impact does diversity, inclusion, leadership, and service have on you?
On a personal level. So I think that loneliness that you just talked about, that if you're different in any way, but I think Chief Fulcher also said earlier, all of us are different in every way. Like everybody in this room is a little bit different. But I think that the way that we grow our, you know, if you plant a monocrop, that it kills the soil. Like if you just grow one thing in the soil over and over again, the soil needs a different variety of nutrients that are the byproduct of that plant when it wastes into the soil. And that you have to rotate crops and change what you grow there in order for that soil to be fertile. I think the workplace is a lot like that. That I think that we need to be pulling in, traditions, histories, and ideologies from different people in order to function. The fire service, I wrote a thesis called Working Fire Recruitment and Retention of Women in the Fire Service. And so I did kind of a nationwide study and included a lot of data from Canada about how and why we've never really in 50 years, at the time of my birth it was illegal for women to be firefighters, and in the last 50 years there's never really increased beyond 4% women in fire. I hear 9% and that's really anomalous for us. So in between Canada and the US it's only 4%. It stands to reason if you look at that evidence-based as a series of data points that makes a trend. It doesn't seem like that number is really likely to go up, and that's maybe because a very small component of American society even wants to step into a job like this, but there are those who do want to, and there are always going to be women in the workplace, right? So my focus is, if you can't make a bigger pool of candidates, you need to work harder to get the ones who want to be there and empower them. That means making them physically and psychologically ready for this work. At an early age, getting them at school age, getting them into the Explorers and the Reserves and the Pathways programs, which is great. CSFA is taking a lead role in the state of California in Pathways. And please send people anytime. We want to be the repository for all things related to candidates and recruitment. If you meet somebody at the grocery store or your pizza delivery person and you think that they've got that spark, send them to the CSFA website and we'll put them on the pathway. Yeah, but the deal is with us is that it's about making, it's like metal alloys, they're stronger when they're recombined. And I think that we just need to recognize that the way forward and actually the identity of the United States, as we look at, like, if we make a 30-year projection into the future, if you look at Bureau of Labor Statistics data on our census, what you're going to find is that, right now, if you look proportionally at the fire service in ethnic breakdowns, if you look at Hispanic, Asian, white, black, we have like a 3/4 representation in the fire service. Like we might have 9% black fire service, 14% black Americans. The only overrepresented group is white Americans, and it's a difference of, I think it's like 92% of America and 88% of the fire service. So if you look at the graph, it's very proportional to see how our ethnic minorities are represented in fire. But if you look forward 30 years, the whole ethnic makeup of our country is shifting, and it's going to change. And you're going to have a smaller white candidate group and a larger Hispanic and Asian and black candidate group. So naturally, organically, things maybe are shifting in our favor anyway, if we want to diversify the fire service. But there's also reasons that it is what it has been with our Irish and our Italian history in the country for the last couple hundred years. This is a very unsavory job that was always done by very hard people, and people often follow in the footsteps of their parents and grandparents. So I like to look at this like it's nobody's fault, but it is your responsibility. You can do something about it.
Thank you for that. Anybody want to add to that? No?
You're like,
I can give a shameless plug for the CSFA pathways, what we're planning.
Let's do that.
Just to add on to what you were saying is that we're looking for some grants and some money, but what we want to do, CSFA wants to show what right looks like, and that we want to personally get out there. So what we're doing right now is we're working on a grant for a trailer. We've got 30 helmets already. We're going to do 30 sets of turnouts, and we're going to go to all cities and fire departments up and down the state and do a youth camp to introduce the fire service to the different kids. And then that will turn into the CSFA. They'll be invited to an Explorer Academy, and also for all departments to, because they're all individual, right? So that Long Beach has the pathways and different places have the pathways, but we want to introduce and have leaders start those pathways all up and down the state. And I'm really looking forward to that, to the future for next year.
Yeah, and we saw that in person Sunday at the Explorer Muster at Ben Clark, where we had hundreds of people, including 21 teams and over 200 young adults. I mean, it was incredible, right? And I think now, after showing Chief Johnson, my friend here from El Dorado Hills Fire, we have a location for the same thing in Northern California that we're going to do later this year, and we're going to continue to grow those musters, and it's going to be a part of our Explorer Academy footprint that we're going to have across the state. So it's huge. We have to, definitely invest in the future. We all have, this isn't really the topic of discussion, well, it kind of is leadership and service in general of this generation. I think a big takeaway from yesterday's keynote, Deputy Chief from FDNY, Frank Lieb, was, the slugs are not in the seats, right? And that's why I don't want in the fire service anymore, is slugs. But again, that's just a personal opinion right now. And it's up to all of us, to kind of change that. And after seeing Sunday, it really inspired me that there's a lot of people that are hungry to do what we're doing. So that's good.
Chief, I'd like to add on to Chief Marquez. As we sit here and we think about this, the demographics of our fire service didn't happen overnight. It took a long time to get the way we are. And I would, on a personal note, think about vitamin P, having a healthy dose of vitamin P, a little more patience. We didn't get here overnight, and therefore we're not going to get out of this overnight, even if we are going to make even a small amount of change. But on the personal note, when we're sitting here looking at ourselves and going, what can we do? Sitting in our seats is not the right place to be. Getting out and being in the public is where you need to be. And that is what I've been trying to do personally, is what have I done that makes a difference, other than writing a strategic plan that says we are diverse and we wish to be inclusive. It's creating a job that is retention recruitment for our staff so that we can actually physically get out. I say, what am I doing out there in the world? Do I sit behind my desk, or do I get out there to every event I can go to, and one, represent by just virtue of what I look like, and two, represent that to the individuals out there who say, well, that's not what I do. That's not what our community is like, and I challenge them why. Why is that the case? Why is it that your culture, whatever it might be, feels that this might be beneath you, or that you never had an opportunity, and then have an opportunity to actually have a good dialogue that says, well, maybe you should think about it. It is an opportunity for you. And you know what? Here's the deal. If you wish to, I'm going to be here as your voice for you. I'm going to be a person who's going to show you how to get to where you're going. The one that never came out to help you. If we want to change things, we need to physically get out and do it. and that's my goal, being here and having an opportunity to this panel. As part of that, or last year, first year for CAL FIRE, being at the Taste of Soul. Physically out there myself, shaking hands, kissing babies is what I call it. And I showed up there intentionally because it was October, so obviously it's breast cancer month, but I'm also a law enforcement officer for CAL FIRE. So I wear my law enforcement gear just to create a conversation that says, wait, you're CAL FIRE. I didn't know who you were, but you're a cop as well. And by the way, you're an African-American guy. Let's have a conversation. Get out there and go do it. If you want to have diversity in your departments, you need to get out from wherever you are and make a difference.
That's great. Chief Marquez?
Yeah, and if I may, I think Frank Lieb said yesterday, Chief Lieb from New York Fire, he said, make a lot of babies, and he was referring to mentorship. There is a wonderful feeling when you get to be like older. I'm quoting myself. The notches in your belt, should be how many people have you mentored, right? How many people did you pluck out of the grocery store line or the photo store or off the bus and say, maybe you've got it, maybe you've got the thing. And it's about being a talent scout, and it's really important at any stage in your career, even if you're a probie, that you're bringing somebody up. That can be male or female, it doesn't matter, there are no rules about it, but you should always, at every stage in your career, be mentoring someone. And the more graduations you go to and the more badges you see pinned, that should be your mark of pride.
Thank you for that. Chief Larson, what are the long-term consequences if we ignore diversity and inclusion?
Well, I think the long-term consequences is just stagnation. I mean, we always joke in the fire service that what do firefighters like? The way things are and change. We're constantly changing. We're constantly evolving. I've been on for 33 years. We're just getting ready to get new breathing apparatus. So this is the 4th different breathing apparatus I will have in my career. So if you don't like change, this is the wrong place for you. But the fire service has changed. They don't do EMS. We do a ton of EMS. So, for that and for that engagement piece, we have a pretty robust social media. One of our #1 posts was after a fire, the kids were peeking over the wall, and the guys took down a ladder and had them help the little kids, carry it back to the fire truck. They put that video up on social media, thousands of likes, right? So it's those little engagements. Who knows if those boys will ever remember that, but it might be the thing they remember that brings them into the fire service. So the little things that we're doing now to better it, and maybe I have a little bit of a unique perspective because I do believe in everybody else's ideas. People have given me ideas, and I'm like, that's a great idea. Well, don't tell that chief I told him. Baloney, I'm going to give you credit for it, not my idea. But wherever you sit and whoever your network is can be very powerful to change your organization, change it for the good. And so if we don't consider that we have to change and have to grow, the fire service is going to go backwards, and we're going to be left in the dust. And then we're going to be the ones that are sitting on the outside, grumpy, wondering, why did this happen? And you'll usually say, why did this happen to me? It's not happening to you, it's happening to the fire service, and you just didn't adapt to that change.
I'm going to add something, if I can. So I think I heard Chief Marquez talk about talent acquisition, or that whole piece. I was up in Santa Clara last week, and I was speaking to some leaders there, and we had a conversation about, are we assessing potential candidates the right way, right? We've been doing it the same way for a long time, but what are the components that we are really assessing? Are we assessing the right areas? And so I think you mentioned, emotional intelligence, cultural competency, these sorts of things. Think about what we're actually doing day to day out there on the streets, right? We're providing service. What are we actually doing? How much time are we actually spending? Not that it's not critical, right? Throwing ladders, those things are obviously critical, but what are the things that we're doing day to day? What competencies do we need our people to have, right? Conflict resolution, I think about public speaking skills, those sorts of things that I just don't think that we are assessing, but they're a big part of what we do day in and day out. And so maybe that's another conversation now for another day, but how do we, if we're gonna change and adapt as the society is changing, what are those components that we are assessing for people coming into the organization? And if we get it right, I think we will be able to adapt with the change that is, we know is coming. We'll be able to meet the needs of the community and what they require, right? If it's, you know, having people speak multiple languages, and there's a whole plethora of items, but I think that's something that we just scratched the surface, but we need to do more of.
I think what you just also hit on what Chief Larson said about the promotional pathway. What are we assessing? You're all ground pounders and you're great firefighters, but you suck at being leaders. And so when you get into that role, we're measuring you this entire time on your probie that says, hey, can you pull that hose? Can you cut that pole? Can you treat that patient? Now we're going to put you in a position of leadership. And we never taught you that. We never taught you to see other people for who they are. Did we assess, as Colton Powell says, we're assessing what we want you to assess for, not what you're going to be doing. So we're going to teach you what we want you to do, but never preparing you for what we want you to be. Part of our diversity, part of our inclusion is doing exactly that. It's, yes, I need you to be able to pull those evolutions, those drills, but I also have to educate you, and this goes part of the management services, the personal HR. It's how do we get you to go further in your career, your upward mobility, your career enhancement. It's continually teaching you how to be better at what you do. And getting out of that comfort zone of, I'm really good at doing the firefighting, but I really suck at being a boss. Our bosses are good leaders, good coaches, good mentors, people who get to see people for who they are, not for who we want to see them as. And we need to change that vision and focus on those individuals as we move them up. We want character more than we want competency, believe it or not. You would rather have a leader of character who is confident in what they do than a leader that is confident, that is a pain in your butt who could not lead you through a wet pick bag. And I'm just being honest. So we need to be focusing on those competencies to build the talent so that we have more leaders, and you will see that if we're focused on our people as leadership, you will see a change in what that makeup looks like. Because now I get a chance to see you all and for everything you bring to the table.
Thank you for that. Chief Cotton, what would you say is the most difficult part of implementing a diversity, inclusion, and leadership program?
Convincing people.
Yeah.
I think that, getting people to understand why, because for a number of people, they think you are doing something to them, they're having something done. If you try and implement some sort of training in diversity and inclusion, it's like, oh God, now what have I got to sit and listen to be told to me? Clearly, and that explaining to people, all the stuff we're talking about here about the benefit, about why it's a great thing. But actually, when you've got, so I can talk about London Fire Brigade, that, still very much predominantly white male workforce. And for a lot of those people, they don't have a problem, so they don't see why it needs to be different because it's been okay for them. So when you're trying to explain to them why it's changing, they instantly are quite defensive and think that, well, you're obviously targeting me, and you're talking about me not being good enough, and you're talking about wanting to have different people come along as leaders. Does that mean I'm not good enough to be a leader? And explaining to them what it actually means and what the benefit is to them, but making people feel part of that and including that conversation and journey, and not doing stuff to people. I remember vividly having equality and diversity training delivered to us very early in my career, where a woman came and sat at the beginning at the front of the room and told us all basically that we were all terrible people and we all did this and we all did that, and it just switched everyone off. And it was just, and as a woman sitting in the group, I didn't even know what to feel. I just kept looking at the guys and looking really hostile, feeling that I was partly responsible because I'm one of those different people, and it was just a horrific experience for everyone involved, and nobody benefited from it. So it's about, how you tell that story, about why you tell them it's important, about making them understand and feel included in that, and it is a benefit for everybody and part of everybody. And that actually, so I remember to give you a kind of example, people need to hear stories. I think stories are really important to get people to understand. And when I joined, it was a very long time ago, and they changed some equipment not long after I joined, and they'd stopped doing a certain evolution of part of training. And literally the story was, oh, they've done that because there are loads of women joining now, hundreds of, no, very small number. They stopped doing that because of the women, and they've changed that bit of kit because of women. But actually they changed it because the amount of firefighters who were sustaining really serious back injuries through really inappropriate use of very heavy equipment, and new technology had come along and made large equipment. So we changed the equipment, but suddenly it's like, oh, it's because of women. But actually it benefits everybody because you're not getting back injuries, people are, having a better time in their career, people aren't struggling with stuff, but it's just the negative spin on it. And I was quite, I just said, isn't it better for all of us? This is a great bit of kit, it's much lighter, we can all use it. Or we don't do this really dangerous procedure anymore because of women. Isn't it great we're not doing that anymore? Because actually you all hated it, you all thought it was terrible, but because you think it's being taken away from you because of a woman, then it's suddenly a bad thing. So, really having that conversation around it's better for everybody, and by doing this, it actually benefits all of us, and it makes it a much better place for us all to work. That we don't just go to work for ourselves, we go to work for the people that we serve, and that's what's really important. And if we're making things better and making ourselves better, then, that's what we're all here for, surely. None of us turn up to work for anyone to have a bad day. We turn up to work to make people's day better, by whatever means, and whether that's internally, and being really decent, kind and human to our colleagues, including everybody in what we do, or whether it's making someone's day better when they're having a really bad day and we turn out and respond to them. I would challenge anyone to say they turn up to work to give anyone a bad day. And if you explain it to people in those terms and start having that conversation rather than apparently doing something to people, then I think that really helps the beginning of the conversation and include people and explain to them. And also say to people it's okay to ask questions. I don't expect you all to know the answer to everything all the time. I definitely don't, and I never have, and I've always been the first one to say that. And I really welcome people to come at any opportunity from whatever part of the organisation to have a conversation with me. Because, I definitely don't know all of it, and I make mistakes, and I'll own up to them. What I hope not to do is repeat them, because sometimes I might, because I'm not perfect. But, to actually say that to people, it's okay to come and ask why, and to have a conversation, and if you don't understand, please say so. And especially when you're talking about people starting to take leadership roles, where we haven't got it right, we haven't given people the training, I'd far rather someone asked a question than actually ploughed on ahead and made a really bad decision, and then tried to either hide that decision or unpick it later on. Come and have that conversation, ask what you think should be happening, get some canvas of opinion from people, and that doesn't just mean people above you, because no one of us is better than anyone in the organisation. We are all huge parts of our organisation, and we all come to work as people with ideas, and thoughts and opinions, and putting those together makes us the strong team we are.
That's great, thank you.
All right, my answer.
I wanted to add something to what the commissioner said. So yesterday, I was having a conversation with some college students. I was asking them about, hey, what do you think the traits are required, right, to be a firefighter? What are the traits you need to come to the table with? And one of the answers was courage. So I asked, well, expand on that a little more. Oh, well, you need to have courage to run into these fires and do these things. And I spun it around on them, and you'll see where I'm going with this in a minute. If I'm sitting on the other side of an interview panel table, to me, this now, when we talk about leadership, courage in the fire service now is, hey, do our leaders have the courage to stand up and stop what is going on at the kitchen table, the conversations that are happening, change the environment that is in our workplace, in the stations? That's, as a leader in my organization, that's where my focus is. I'm looking for leaders that have courage to change those things, to stop those actions, to change the environment. That's where we're getting ourselves in trouble. Do you have the courage to say, stop, no, don't, That, to me, is where we are. If you've ever been at the kitchen table, you know the peer pressure in the fire station is crushing. It's crushing. People will sit there and they will let the person next to them get maligned, just hammered. And it's the whole thing, well, at least they're not doing it to me. Too bad for them. You're gonna do that for this person, but hey, I'm just gonna sit back and just, let it happen. We have to move away from that. Right? And so as leaders, we have to create that environment and let our people know that, hey, it's okay to stand up. It's okay to have that courage to call people out. Right? Call them out, call them in, whatever you need to do. But so back to the classroom portion at the beginning, I wanted these students to start thinking about courage in a different way. Okay, and so how are we doing that in our agencies? It's one act at a time, one person at a time. 'Cause that gets around. Right? You do that one kind of unpopular kind of, hey, stop, don't do that, hey, come into my office, whatever it is. How long do you think it's going to take for that story to get out to the rest of the agency or the rest of the organization? Hey, did you hear what Chief Larson did? Someone was saying this and she go call them out. You're starting to affect change, right? You're starting to affect the culture of the department. It's not okay to engage in those kinds of acts. It's hard. It's hard, right? Firefighting is hard. Running the burning buildings, ladders, all that, that's hard. But it's harder for people to step up and in those environments and say something. And I think that's where we have more work to do.
So for the group, a lot of, especially this last topic, in your guys' opinion, who is the most impactful position in the firehouse? Which rank?
Captain.
Company officer?
I totally agree. You guys?
Absolutely. Not us. They're with them. They're with
Oh, it's not us,
Yeah.
no.
24/7.
This
So I
wasn't,
think that's where we need to focus, that training, that component of sensitivity, for lack of a better term. I mean, my experience, company officers that work for me, some of them had it when they came into the job, others very talented at their job, horrible with the people skills thing, and that's part of that company officer training, if you will. It needs to be kind, understanding, that needs to be a component of their training, because some people just don't have it. I mean, they have the gift for the job, but they don't have that gift of interpersonal skills to share that with their subordinates, for lack of a better term, and to be that guiding light, say, hey guys, we're not gonna do that shit, all right? Knock it off. Just because you've got a bad tooth doesn't mean we're gonna call them back, right? Knock that shit off. And every firehouse, God knows you have those guys who get the nickname, and it's not very kind and loving, that sticks with them their whole career. That's the kind of stuff that, as company officers, you gotta nip that shit in the bud. Our job is so unique because it is a family environment. You live with these people. You know their kids, you know their wives, you know when they've got issues, problems at home, whatever. How many jobs are like that? I worked 8 to 5 for a while. You go to work, you leave work, you're done. Fire department, you're there for 48 hours if they're doing it right. So that's 2 days. You're spending more time with these people than you are your own family. And that's the component that we need to bring into that company officer. It's like, hey man, you're the dad. You gotta be the guy to take care of all the kids, not just the guys you like.
Well, that's the challenge of the first line supervisor and that challenge of buddy to boss, right?
Absolutely.
Because,
That's a great
hey, he's my buddy and I'm gonna take care of him, and we laughed and scratched, and it's Sunday, and then all of a sudden I'm transferred and I'm promoted, and now we can't be buddies. But you have to figure out, and you have to learn, and everybody's gonna learn it in a different way, is that we can still be buddies, but I gotta be the boss first. And if, as that first line supervisor, if you set your ground rules, lay down what's acceptable for you, and you couch it in the sense that when you do this wrong thing, I'm gonna have a conversation with you, not because I don't like you, but because I wanna keep you out of trouble, you can reestablish that best buddy but you have to establish that boss thing. In our organization, we have that challenge with people that have been drivers for a long time, or engineers or apparatus operators. And they're in the locker room. They're that locker room leader that I talked about earlier, and they can't get their foot out of the locker room. And you have to be able to make that as a first line supervisor, you have to be able to make that transition and step out of that locker room, pick your locker room leader, set that person up with your expectations to guide the rest of the crew on what are the acceptable standards that you have. And everybody that has challenges as a supervisor has that challenge with buddy to boss. And sometimes it follows them from a captain to a lieutenant to a chief officer. They still have that same challenge. Some of it, I think, can be taught, and sometimes they learn it the hard way. But that challenge to buddy to boss is huge in the fire service because everybody has that innate sense and desire to be liked. You can, because we talk about it a lot, right? You don't have to like the person, you got to respect the rank. You could like the person too, respect the person, you just have to figure out how do you get to that spot. And so that, with lack of training or education, is where we set our supervisors up for failure, unfortunately. And that, I think, kind of goes along all of them. And if you've ever been to any of the big conferences, FDIC, Tiffany Wesley Boyd does a very good conversation lecture on that specific topic, buddy to boss, and how that transition is probably the most important transition for the company level officer.
You bring it up, I took it, it was a 3-day class, and Buddy and Boss was actually the title. One of the best classes I ever had, and it was components exactly what we're talking about, leadership and command presence and all those things. And yeah, I couldn't agree more.
And our people are watching, right? The people, the firefighters, the new firefighters, everyone's watching what you're doing, right? They are looking at you, they're setting the they're setting the template up for their own leadership style because they will be in your position. If they see activities and behaviors that seem to be acceptable to the group, they're going to emulate that. So you as a leader, that's part of that responsibility as a leader. Show them what right looks like, make those tough decisions, unpopular decisions sometimes, but the organization's going to be better off for the long run because you're setting these future leaders up for success.
We're going to open it up to the audience here in just a couple minutes, but thanks, Tom. You jumped the gun, like always. But to your point, not only do company officers need that training, I would argue it's got to start a lot sooner than that, early in your journey. And I'll point to the personal experience. When I worked for CAL FIRE, it was every single year we had sexual harassment training, right? Every single year. I get hired by the Long Beach Fire Department, very historic, steeped in tradition and a lot of other things. I get hired by them. I'm a rookie firefighter, and I'm sitting down at a table. There's 2 captains, female firefighter, and I am getting completely filleted, right? And Mr. Mike Shaw probably knows who the gentleman was who was doing the filleting. He was notorious for that, right? He would do that, if you went to this particular station, you're going to sit in front of this guy, and he's going to question you on your sexual orientation, how many girlfriends, how many boyfriends, this, that, the other thing, and I'm like, holy shit. And I'm thinking to myself, I am not in CDF anymore, So my point is, it's organizational also, right? It's totally organizational, and with CAL FIRE working for the state, it was like, you just didn't play around, right? I mean, it was just different. And then, we came, books, and then I worked together with Jason, and I can tell you, like, the transit, it's just wrong is wrong, right? And we all know, and I guarantee you the people at the table were uncomfortable, and they're watching this exchange and, completely inappropriate. But the supervisors did not step up and do their job. Chief Miles too, he knows. So yeah, it starts also with the organization. So let's get one more question, and then we're going to open it up to the audience. So let's see, Chief Lee, what successful innovations or initiatives or best practices have you done during your time in the fire service that help to identify or implement things concerning diversity and inclusion issues?
I think that I was the shortest tenured chief in the history of El Segundo Fire Department because it only lasted a year and a half. And that's for, I'll tell you that story later at the bar. But what I tried to do in the short time, first of all, facilities, yeah, they cost money, but that's the easiest thing. We put a lactation room, we did gender neutral signage, you know, like just changed the facilities overall. I did do a lot of leadership training for frontline supervisors. It really poured into them so that so they were no longer, I call a bro or a buddy, and really stop it there, because if it doesn't stop at that level, then it pushes up to the battalion chief, and then if the battalion chief's a bro, then everything's my problem all the time. But also while I was there, which it has already been discontinued, is that I held the first girls empowerment camp, and we had about 30 girls that enjoyed that camp. Some retreads for the second year. I did it 2 years in a row. And so also I think that it helped. I want you to share with why we do the empowerment camps. But also just being there, just being a woman chief, just to say if you can see it, you can be it. And you know, I said I believe in being vulnerable, but it was pretty brutal. And honestly, you guys, it's brutal to be a chief. And the chiefs that are here, because if you take it seriously, you know, you care so much, you know, and you try to do everything you can for, you know, the only, and I stole this from someone else, but my only requirements were be professional, be ready, and take care of each other. And you can tell by the emotion in my voice that I really still care. But what I want to tell you, and I don't know if this is rated R or rated PG, but we talk about the captains, and a few of the firefighters have called me since I retired, and there was a kitchen conversation, and I had made some kind of directive where you need to call a battalion chief, and fire chief, or whatever, and that was it. And there's a captain and a paramedic and an engineer in the kitchen, and the captain's in there, and the engineer said, oh yes, she wants to be called fire chief, more like fire cunt. And the paramedic looked over at the captain, and the captain said, I didn't hear anything. And so, you guys, this is the problem. Okay, you have a person sitting right here that will do anything for you, that wants to give you all the training, give you all the love, give you everything, you know, and we just need support from every rank up the line. And so, I don't think that answers your question, but we want to have courageous conversations, and that's what it is.
No, well, thank you for sharing that. It's personal, and yeah, I mean, those of us that become chief officers, it is lonely, and decision making is tough. And you can literally turn a place around, and they're still gonna, you know, let's just be honest, people are critics, right? And people are always going to criticize what you do or don't do, but leading is incredibly important, and especially if you're doing it with passion and caring about our people, which I know for a fact every single person here cares, and that's why they're here, right? So appreciate you guys sharing, and at this time we're going to open it up to you folks so we can engage in some Q&A. Do we have a mic? I thought we did.
That
mic. Had one yesterday.
The mic.
That's a dead joke.
Oh, they're all okay. We had a hand up.
Speak loud.
Got it.
Yes.
We'll
All
hear
right,
it.
yeah, all right, yeah. If somebody has a question or join in the conversation, please. Let's get involved.
Well, I would like to touch on what Chief Lee just said, and honestly, I thought I worked for a well less department, and things out of control, and you totally just went up there. I know that's a bad thing, but the point that everybody made about all of you instantly agree, Captain is
That's a great question.
I think it's not a coincidence that our suicide rate surpasses our line of duty death rates every year. And a lot of the things you can attribute to those suicides are not just that you saw a lot of car accidents or hangings or SIDS deaths. It's a lot of what happens in your fire stations. So how you change it is you hold people accountable and you take accountability for yourself and you choose to be, if you're going to lose friends, you made a comment that you put out a DEI policy and you lost friends. I don't know, maybe just reveal who your friends are.
Yeah, they weren't your friends in the first place.
I don't know, so you can't, I don't know if you can always be popular and right, but maybe you just have to sit with your own integrity at the end of the day and choose to be right instead of popular.
There's no way to do it. As soon as you become a chief officer, you're not one of the folks anymore.
You're dead anyway.
You know, absolutely. And we all know that the company officer is going to make or break a firehouse. And that's the issue. And then as a chief officer, if you get involved, you know, as Chief said earlier, firefighters hate two things: change and the way things are. You as a chief officer trying to change that, all of a sudden everybody hates you. Even though you know you're doing the right thing, and they know you're doing the right thing, they still hate you because you're the one trying to change things. But guess what? That's what the job of a chief officer is to do that. And you have to be able to look in the mirror and say, I'm doing the right thing. I don't care if these guys like it or not. And that's tough when you fought fire with them and grew up with them, because I started with 6 guys and we all promoted together, and some of us passed other ones, and you know that brotherhood is still there baseline, but you're not one of the fellas anymore, aren't you?
But to that point, every station, every shift has their own climate and their own culture.
Absolutely.
I worked at a station when I was a firefighter, had some senior members, but I was one of the more junior. There was a captain on one of the shifts the guys didn't like. They ran him out. So to not think that you as a firefighter don't have power is a mistake. If your leader is not behaving the way you want, you have the opportunity to steer the ship. You may not have the opportunity to transfer, but we made that guy's life living hell. I was one step shy of insubordination on McCall, and I apologized to the other captain that he worked with him. Nothing happened to me. He left within about 2 months. The guys ran him out. So that courageous conversation, that courageous action, that stopping a microaggression, putting a halt to a conversation, that can happen at any level. You, as the person, have to have the emotional intelligence to realize it's happening, and you have to have the intestinal fortitude to withstand whatever is going to happen on the back end. I didn't get into the fire service to be popular. I've had people call me all kinds of things throughout my career. I don't care, because the way I see it, that's a reflection of them, not a reflection of me. I've done everything I can to get to a promoted position. I've reached back to help other people get into promoted positions, to help other people get on a job. Testament to you as a first-line supervisor when people want to bid to your station. And it should be a big, giant red flag to any organization when a bunch of people want to bid out of a station because of a supervisor. That should be a chief officer's red flag that, oh man, this is a bad place, something toxic is going on there. And as a chief officer, I had to handle that too. It wasn't pleasant. And the captain actually, when I went back to deliver some mail one day when I was a battalion chief, he looked at me, he's like, what are you doing in my fire station? I looked at him, not your fire station, buddy, mine.
Because you're going to see empower firefighters to be able to not be insubordinate, or is that just sort of interpreted, we got to get rid of this person, so let's start.
Usually it starts with some stuff happening. Usually one of the firefighters will put a bug in the driver of the chief about something's not so right here, and it gets back to all the chiefs on the ship.
Driver of the chief. Rich
chief.
people problems.
Yeah, but I mean, however it happens, some people will literally, if they feel comfortable enough with you, they will come up to you and have that conversation. It's not outside the realm of possibility. But it's everybody's responsibility to try to change the culture if it's not good. Because, I don't know, I like going to work and having fun. Even as a captain, I'd pick up the business phone and I'd be laughing. We'd just finished line up in the kitchen. People were like, what's so funny? You don't have fun when you're at work? If you're going into work and it's making you angry or frustrated or sad or depressed, there's something wrong with that fire station. You either need to leave or you need to figure out how to change the atmosphere, put some positive ions in it or something. I don't know. Because you should have fun when you go to work. This is the greatest job in the world. We have our issues, but it's still the greatest job in the world.
I always had fun at work until I became chief officer, and then the fun kind of went out the window. Yeah.
Anyone else? Anything?
Can I just comment on that last bit? So,
Sure, we'll get through next.
the UK Fire Service is undergoing a bit of a kind of moment where there are lots of stories being revealed, people going to the media about people being treated really badly at work, and then doing a lot of investigations, and the overarching kind of inspection regime dictated that all the fire service in the UK must have an independent whistleblowing line, so that people have the ability to be able to phone a number independent of their own fire service and report things anonymously, or if they want to put their name to it, that will then get investigated by an outside company. It leads to problems where you can get some, people reporting stuff just because they're genuinely being managed because they're not behaving well. But also, what it's leading to a culture of is people seeing that situations will get dealt with, and people are calling people out all the way through from firefighter to very senior officers for behaviours, and people are now seeing that actually change will happen. And it's been done in quite a dramatic way, but it's been done as a result of so many reports into bad behaviour, and where people, we all know the circumstances where somebody has tried to intervene when they are being treated badly, they end up becoming the victim and quite often leave because they are just persecuted for it. This is now actually giving other people responsibility to call things out. And it's having a really positive impact because people are seeing that actually those people who are behaving badly in their workplace are creating toxic atmospheres. They don't want them there. They're too scared to challenge them because it reflects back on them. But they're now seeing there are ways of being able to deal with the situation. And it is making a positive change. It was, quite a rocky road to begin with. But I think that people are now feeling, okay, I can be at work. I can be the person that might have heard that horrific comment. It makes me so angry, it makes me want to punch people. But, they can hear that. And if they don't have the confidence to challenge it at that time, they can then report it. Of course, you will get the situation if I didn't see or hear anything. It wasn't me, I didn't hear that. But actually, when enough people come forward, people start to realise that action will be taken, and that kind of behaviour just won't be accepted because we all want to come to work and have a good time. Hugely sad times when you can't have fun at any level, but when the fun is impacting on one person and it's not fun for them, it's not fun anymore, and it's time to take action and deal with it.
Yeah, tying on to all that, it really, how do you make change? It's having the courage to actually stand up. If you look inside yourself, ask yourself, why did you lack the courage to do something in the past? You were either scared or afraid something would happen to you, or you were too arrogant to see that you were in the wrong. And so when we look at that, folks will attack the chiefs. And by the way, I'm a firm believer that I have an arrow pointed at my chest right now, and I have an arrow pointed at my back right now. So any decision I make, any percent of you will agree with me, and there's a large percentage of you that will disagree with me. I happen to wear a soft body armor to at least survive it, but a lot of people don't, and it really affects most of us when you go up that rank. But you still have to have the courage to actually make a decision. And our decisions should be based on service. Making those changes. Service is truly, it's like being a parent. You tell your kid or she that they're not going to go out tonight because they broke a rule. Well, if you don't live up to that, they're going to continue to break the rules, but they're going to be mad at you. They're going to hate you for a short period of time and call you horrible names behind your back. What you're hoping is that through time they're going to mature and they're going to realize that they were wrong and they'll come to you and apologize like I did my father for being just a pain in the butt. But they love you when you do what they want, and they hate you when you don't give them what they want. It's like being a fire chief. Ask your labor organization. They love you when you give them everything, and you're the worst person in the world. You're a horrible chief. if you don't give them what they want. You still have to have the courage to stand out there and go, we are doing the right thing. Ethically, I'm doing the right thing. You've got to do it with some positivity. You have to be selfless in your job. There's nothing that you do about you. It's meant to be about everybody else. And if many of you are like us, service is in your mission. We serve everybody else. Not ourselves first, but everybody else. So going through that process is identifying. Don't be afraid. Or if you are, actually acknowledge that you're afraid. Acknowledge that that's something that you have to deal with because it's going to affect you later on. But still do it. Be a parent. Don't treat them like children, but be a parent. And you'll make the change. It's just going to take a little bit of time. And I don't know if it was, who was his name, Chris? We're sitting next to Mike. The individual sitting next to you, Tom. You know, I look at that, and he said the word sensitivity training. It sort of cut right through the middle of me. And I would love to change that word, not to sensitivity, it's understanding training. When I am not looking at myself, so caught up in who I am and what I'm worried about, I can actually see you. And so the training is more focused on me identifying, seeing you, hearing you, and understanding you. And when I can see, hear, and understand you, by the way, my therapist helped me with this.
This is like chief therapy, by the way.
When I can do that, then I can make you the focal point. And I can hear you enough to hear your point of view. And if I need to provide a little more information or education or purpose for why we're doing what we're doing, that's my job. And then I might win you over. I might win the hearts and minds. And as you're a new company officer, it's like being a new parent. You suck at it, most of them, because you don't know what you're supposed to do. And it takes your grandparents to come along and go, do you think you really need to do that? And of course, you're not listening to them because you're still stuck in your own head. You're not paying attention to their wisdom, and that would be the chiefs, whether it be your battalion chief, your assistant chief, your chief. You're not open enough to hear somebody else and see what your issue is, because maybe that one's a little more pride. I made it here. I know what I'm doing. I don't need to learn. I don't need to grow. And who are you to tell me what to do? This is my firehouse. This is my crew. Drop the pride, acknowledge the fear, and still make the decisions, and you will get change. I just don't promise that it'll happen overnight.
That's a great point. Drew.
So, hearing all of you, there's quite a few mentors out there that I respect a lot. This is really dear to my heart as an educator now. I read the board, so a little bit of my background. I'm the program director of a high school program that oversees
So we have 4 magnet high schools geographically around the city. The magnet high school, we were talking about this earlier, our return on investment for that specific program is 100% graduation rate. The return on investment for getting people hired is our cadet program. So the challenge is there's the gap thing. I will tell you that the last 2 fire chiefs we've had have all said the same thing. The average age that we hire on the city fire department is about 26 to 28. What we have now incorporated as a gap after that high school magnet program, we're partnering with 2 colleges, Southwest College and LA Valley College, as a cohort fire science degree, so that they go and get that fire science degree and their EMT through the community college level. And so that's like another pathway that they have. And it's just a challenge. And I know most departments say 18 years old, high school diploma, GED. The city does because they want everybody to have the opportunity. The reality is, the fire chiefs will tell you they want people to get some life experience. And it's a crappy thing to say, but that's kind of the reality. That's why we built that pathway into it. But we don't have an expectation that the kids in the magnets are going to become firefighters. We do a big, huge magnet graduation with all 4 magnets. Majority of those kids are going to college, and because of their demographic, they qualify for LA Promise, the kids that are staying locally, they get their community college paid for. Few of them are going into the military, but what our pitch to them is, if you go get your education, we're still going to be here, and we're still going to be hiring. So there's no perfect way, I don't think, into the fire service, and if you ask everybody in this room, everybody took a different pathway into the fire service. So the challenge is, you know, what do you do to get those kids prepared if they're ready, willing, and able? I'll be honest, my grandson's in the magnet program at Monroe in the Valley. There's no way he's going to be a firefighter. He thinks he's going to be a baseball player, but he's not that good either. But what it's giving him is structure and discipline. Those instructors that are passionate about what they teach, that level of commitment on your end is more valuable than you realize. And I don't know how you explain that to the educators, you know, the principals and all that, and why they're not getting hired. But you're still having a way bigger impact than you probably even know on those kids right now.
Yeah, I completely agree with Chief Larson, Drew. That is what you're doing. You're creating better people, period, right? And that's the goal. And you're also an anomaly because all of us are struggling to hire people. So it's so there's that. And I think that's why we're so passionate going back to the CSFA Pathways Committee and what we're doing. It's truly important to engage with public-private partnerships and different organizations to see this through. For the people, not everybody is a good firefighter candidate. They're not. But are they a good fire prevention officer candidate? Are they a good 911 dispatcher, right? And so I believe that that's you know kind of what we're doing. Our goal, like in HEMED, the program that I started, that we're really proud of, is it was at a continuation high school. And frankly, I don't think there was a lot of faith that it was going to, succeed. But you've been there and you've been helpful in the program, and we're in our 2nd year, and I'm incredibly proud of the outcome. Again, these kids are graduating high school, which is the first goal, and then the second goal, they're being exposed to a career in public safety. Last year, we had 5 kids that went to EMT school through our partnership with AMR. And I think I just heard one of those students just passed her national registry, right? So there's small victories, but eventually if we continue to do this everywhere, we haven't even released this publicly yet, but CSFA is actually going to have a new EMT program here in Riverside that we were awarded. We're one of 11 organizations in the state of California that are actually going to oversee a new EMT program, which is going to be, terrific. And then same thing, we're going to work with our workforce development partners. We're going to work with private ambulance partners. There's the, 3 Cs, hand crews, et cetera, et cetera. So we're trying to find those pathways.
The other challenge is becoming a firefighter has become very expensive. When you talk about, you need to get your CPAT, it's $160. You've got to take a written test. If you're taking FCTC, it's $50. or if you're taking other tests that other departments sponsor, ours is $73. And then you gotta factor in EMT. You go to a smaller organization, they require a fire academy. That's a lot of money.
And paramedic.
And paramedic. That's a lot of money that you have to get just to get in the door of the fire service, which has changed since I came on. So, I mean, that's another factor. I know we do, if you're a cadet, we do EMT scholarships and paramedic scholarships. But, you know, some of the private ambulance companies, these kids, some of them, I'll call my grandson, he's 16, he hasn't taken a driver's course. Can't work for a private ambulance company if you haven't been a driver for 2 years. They can't insure you. So there's other things that are preventing the kids from getting everything they need, but it's really about the education piece. So we do have a nationwide shortage of firefighters, so don't give up, because it's probably going to be a question of when, not if they're motivated.
So Drew, you hit on that. Tomorrow, Riverside County is having an expo with a consortium of students. Sole purpose to get to high schools and to junior colleges to bring people out. Will we expect that we'll get a 100% application rate? No, not at all. But it's educating, informing, it's giving the guidance. Your program at school, that's about resilience. That's about having worth. That individuals who thought they couldn't achieve something, you've given them a pathway to know that they can, and from whatever environment. So keep that up. Just what the expectation is on the backside, you can't get people to do certain things. But on the shameless side, hey, I will send one of my retention and recruitment folks out to you in exams to your school if you want, and we will actually sit down with you and your students, those that are old enough to, or going to be old enough, and we'll help them do their applications. Just for the sole purpose of, I'm trying to bring you in. And just last week, at our executive meetings, we're talking about dropping our minimum qualifications for our firefighters. All because of what are we doing? Who are we excluding? And why are we excluding them? How many self-imposed rules are our agencies putting on individuals that inadvertently are eliminating folks from whatever community it might be, because it's an education or it's an experience. I don't have the opportunity to go to your schools. I don't have an opportunity to go to the academy. I don't have an opportunity to do X, Y, and Z because it's just not there. We're preventing them from doing that, and it's subconscious. So we're looking at changing all that. And so, yeah, we're looking for your people. Thank you.
The thing, so I have 7 notes that I wrote down here, questions that I can ask all 7 of these, and ultimately it comes down to what it is that's holding our students at high school and college level, and one of the things is national registry. You have kids that are being harmed by their parents,
Well, so let me just real quick, and then we'll give somebody else a chance before we wrap up. But Thurman, right here in the front row, is our CSFA EMS committee chair. And this is something that we have several seats at the state level, including with state, Tom Carlisle, Jason Hosea, the state fire marshal, Daniel Burnett, will be here tomorrow. So that's a conversation that we'll have and certainly express some of that. So thank you.
I'll be at, the Riverside County Cal Fire Career Expo with my student actors that are going, so David and I will be at that.
Good.
I'll be back there.
Anyone else before we wrap up? Oh, Chief, and then I'll get to you, ma'am.
So, I would argue that your program is probably more successful than you know. So, running 30 academies is more about the life experience, more about the life academy. Skills are the skills. Fully knowing that a large majority of those students may or may not become firefighters, but I can tell you that positive. It might not be that next day, it might not be today. Your stats might not show that right now, but they do. I've got one here that I haven't seen in 10 years, not in fire service, but he was here as a vendor here. But the experience that he had in those academies, that's what it's about. That kid's going to tell you, they're going from stuff. Perfect. Call the sheriff, no address, do that. Those are the types of things that you're giving them right now that will come back full forward, either into fire service or they're a better person because of the experiences that they're getting in your program.
Thank you, Chief, ma'am.
I was just interested in the pathways I'm gonna work with the Santa Monica Fire, and I'm interested in starting the Explorers program. I think we're gonna be starting a AO program with the EMS division that we just started. And I'm wondering, I know that there's a program that Diversity offers with the train, and I'm trying to figure out, trying to get kids from Crenshaw and Dorsey to be able to access, getting the programs at our drill towers to kind of go in. I wanted to know how open other organizations or departments are to just kind of cross-collaborating and knowing, so that we can work more holistically to meet everybody's needs and be able to kind of fill in those gaps. Interested in working with also just that high school gap, because I know we wouldn't hire anybody until they're 21, and we want people with life experience, but providing opportunities in between, in those gap kind of places. And I'm just wondering, would you be, or do you think that departments are open to collaborating in that aspect?
Oh, sure. Dorsey's one of our magnets. So, yeah, I can get you the name of our senior project coordinator who handles all that. I think we were talking about your frustration with the NREMT. To me, that speaks to the equity piece when we talk about DEI, and it's a barrier to entry. I was talking to a firefighter from Beverly Hills when we did our girls' camp last week. We got rid of their written test because too many people were failing it. What does that say? That's an artificial barrier to entry. When I was sitting as a battalion chief of recruitment, I took my test. I took the state test. I did way better on the state test than I did my test. I look at the pass rates for my test. They suck. 67% of the people that take our test pass. That's a barrier to entry that does not need to be there. Some people suck at taking tests. I'm one of them. So why do I want to hamper somebody? Somebody might have great skill set. They're just not a good test taker. So when I hear that, they changed the NREMT and now it's even harder, that is going to have an adverse impact on certain demographics of people. I already know that because I know what ours is. So I can already tell you that's going to happen. So it's really disappointing to hear that they said a bunch of PhDs made a test that's even harder for people to pass. If somebody's dedicated that time to study for that EMT course and passed it, that should be, the cherry on top should be that they just go straight through and pass that NREMT. So that's disappointing to hear, but those are those things that we talk about in the fire service that change the demographics, as Chief Marquez said, in the fire service. What are the man-made or unknown barriers that we don't see until we do that deep dive into it. Because as Chief Cotton said, hey, when we change something and it makes it easier for somebody, they say, oh, it's for the women. Well, usually makes it better, and the guys will say, oh yeah, it's way better. Right, it makes it better for everybody, not just one person. So that's a horrible thing.
Second part of my question was going to be about training. How are you guys implementing the actual equity and inclusion training, like within, are you having kitchen table conversations? Are you using, you use ATS? I'm just trying to figure out a way to kind of get the equity and inclusion training to the floor. And is that maybe making it to where people are taking training like they normally do? It's not like we go out to the drill tower and we go do all the exercises. But for the equity and inclusion piece, how are you developing that training, and how is it going out to your staff? And the other question about the training, if you guys are capturing how you're helping queer community members in distress, if you're capturing that outside of just the normal binary, gender markers, when you're going out on EMS calls. I had a question about that too, just demographic-wise. How fast are we going when we're going out and reaching community members?
I can speak to that. So we're using a couple methods, right? So for example, our implicit bias training, we're using vector solutions or target solutions. That's more of a web-based type of training. Racial equity training was a citywide effort. Every department had to do it, and we just felt like it was so impactful that it had to be in person because there's some interaction there, right? We wanted to get the conversation going in the room, and you can't really do that, from a distance ed approach. So we were just doing session training, like we do our normal EMS training. We have groups of fire companies come in. We just schedule it throughout the day. So I can say, for me, for 2 weeks straight of doing that, my brain was fried. But again, it was worth it. But it's got to be continuous, right? That's the other thing that we need to be cautious about. I think we're at this point now where I think a lot of people have kind of a DEI fatigue, and they're thinking it's kind of falling off the table. And I was just, was sitting in our command staff the other day, and I'm the DEI officer for our department, and I felt it necessary to remind everybody in the room, we're rolling out this training again because we've hired new people. We've hired new lifeguards, ambulance operators, recruit firefighters. They need to come to this. This wasn't a one-time thing. So that's up to us as leaders in the space to keep the momentum going, right? Don't let it fall off the table, because if you let it, it will. So keep it on the front burner.
Yeah.
Last point, real quick.
We'll also talk to her offline too,
Yeah.
and help with, research.
Yeah, we do ours. We have quarterly training, COSEP for the chief officers, OSEP for the fire officers, and there is a DEI component in that quarterly all the time.
Your last point, Chief?
Oh, just gender equity training, those are definitely on our radar. We want to make sure we get the right people that are very knowledgeable in that space. So I'm not knowledgeable enough in that space, so the challenge for me is to find someone in the community. What I'm trying to get is for someone in the community to come and teach our people that are SMEs in that space. I just think it adds more value. It's more authentic, and so that's been kind of the challenge for us. But that's how I plan on rolling that type of training out.
So I wanted to thank all of you for making the time to come and engage in what was really, I think, a really impactful conversation with some people that are really truly making a difference. I actually heard some comments that were distressing, that when people saw this panel or this, being offered, that they wanted to shy away from it, right? To Chief Jose's point, fatigue and oh my God, here we go again, more diversity, equity stuff. And my question to everyone in the fire service these days is, so are we only brothers and sisters when somebody dies? Is that it? Right?
Good at that.
Yeah, we seem to be really good
Put
at
on
that.
awesome
Fair
people.
wizard.
But bringing people up and supporting people that are struggling. Another word is standard. I'll leave you with that. Those are, who's standard, right? That's a whole other can of worms. So we have to really reflect and think on some of these things. So with that, I strongly encourage everyone to enjoy their lunch break. Please stop by and visit our exhibitors. There's some really cool things that are set up over there. We encourage that. They help bring us all together. And if please, any parting comments from you guys to the crowd?
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you coming. It's up to you all, right, to keep the momentum going. Get innovative, get uncomfortable. That's how we're gonna make it happen.
Educate yourself and reach out. I mean, there's people out there that are subject matter experts in different things, and they usually are willing to share any and all information they've got.
And I think every single one of us is a company officer in our own little microcosm. So we all do have an influence. It's just a matter of how deep that circle is. So make an impact, make a difference.
Patience, you mentioned that word patience. I was in Arizona a couple of days ago with Chief Greenberry, and he was talking about the 30-year fire service career. And if we're really going to hire somebody for 30 years, you have to go through a lifespan with those people, right? Like you have to grow them up, and they've got to go through their first breakup, and their first divorce, and their first bad assignment, and messing up on a fire. And we've really got to give each other grace to mess up. So I think that it's important to think about that. Like we really do spend a lot of time together and over a long duration. Man, we are so intolerant of other people's errors. So patience and grace and allowing yourself to make mistakes and not being so hard on your company officers and your chief officers and your probies. I mean, be nice to yourselves, be nice to each other. It's not that hard. It's a Bernstein principle.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna add to that. Don't be afraid to say something because I know that I'm in the station and I deal with a lot of people. Many of you I work with on a different capacity. And some of the biggest things that they'll share is like, oh, this is not going right, this is not happening, I spoke to somebody, somebody spoke to somebody, and so forth and so on. And when they have the chief in front of them, when they have the opportunity to say, hey, chief, can I have a powwow with you and let you know what's going on? Don't say, the chief asks, how are you doing? They're like, oh, we're great, everything's peachy. And I'm like, that was your opportunity to take a little bit of your time just to share some of our concerns. You don't have to if you don't want to put somebody's name out there, but don't be afraid to open that door because I know I made it possible for many people to be in front of a chief and they say nothing. And I'm like, okay, I'm walking away, but I'm not scared and I've been in those uncomfortable seats and people have talked about me for so long, but I have thick skin and I can care less because they don't give me the air I breathe so that I can continue doing better. So that's my point.
You want to talk about an Explorer champion, by the way, for the entire state of California? Gigi. Seriously. She's amazing. So with that, thank you all. Remember, please support our vendors. Also come back for Commissioner Danny Cotton's presentation at 2 o'clock. We then have our sip and sign, cocktail reception, and book signing with some of the officers that are here. I believe that is at 4 or 5, and then the President's dinner at 7 p.m. So thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your day.